Welcome to Point Blank. This is your host, Panama Crypto. Today our guest is Stackin Bits. He's a full-time surfer and crypto trader, living the dream of financial freedom in paradise. Welcome, Stackin. Good to have you in
Yeah,
Point Blank, my man.
Panama. Thanks for having me on, man. Stoked to share some thoughts and ideas on here and rap with you.
Sweet, let's get going. So can you shed some light on who Stackin Bits is?
Stacking bits. All right, I guess I'm referring to myself in the third person here a little bit. Um, I'm just a normal dude, I think, for the most part, and more than anything, just somebody who's passionate about what he dedicates energy and time to, and those things are surfing and traveling. Snowboarding is one of my previous passions, but because of where I live, I don't get to do that as much as I used to, and probably somewhat of an anti-establishment individual as well. And at the base of all of it, determines to carve my own unique path through life. I've been somebody that's been fairly defiant. School and things like that were never my path, and so at times maybe there was some challenges and things weren't as easy as they could have been if I had taken a more standardized route. But yeah, that's a quick little synopsis. Some of the things that have led me to where I am now.
So what is your professional background?
That's a funny question, man. To be honest with you, I mean, I don't really, because I didn't walk a standard path through life. Like I didn't, your average path. They go to high school and they get their diploma, and then they go to university and they get a degree, and you go through all these steps that society lays out for you, and eventually you carve out some sort of a career and things like that. And I just didn't really take that path. The first actual professional thing I ever did was snowboarding. And I led my way into that because that was the first real passion that I had in life. When I was a kid, I didn't graduate high school. So I dropped out of high school, and I got my GED or whatever. And this is kind of a deal my mom made with me when I went to her, and I said, I can't do it anymore. I would just school. It just was. I just couldn't do it. That whole manner of being in a structured environment like that just wasn't an environment for me to thrive in. I needed to create my own structure. And so she was like, all right, cool, go get your GED and you can drop out if you want to. So I went and did that. I dropped out, and, and then sit in front of my mom and dad, and they say, cool, so what are you going to do? What are you going to study in college? And I laughed in their faces. I was like, college? I'm not going to college. And they
Are
said,
you
well, what are you going
crazy?
to do? Yeah, they said, well, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going snowboarding. And they were, obviously not happy to hear
Thrilled.
that. But they knew, that that was what I was passionate about. So they supported it from, um, I guess, emotional standpoint. They stood behind me, and they could see I
That's
was
really
passionate
neat.
about it. Yeah, they were cool about it. They said, well, we're not helping you in any way. You're going to have to do that all by yourself and on your own. And which is funny because I never expected any sort of help to begin with. So, yeah, man. So that was like the first thing that I really did. I, moved to a place where there was a lot of, where there was a lot of action in terms of snowboarding, kind of an epicenter for the activity. And through the course of doing that and pursuing that, I began to network and meet a bunch of people, and I got to travel and, met people within the industry. And within a year or two, and I wasn't ever making any real money on it. I was getting money for travel and stuff like that, but I didn't give a shit. I was fucking like 19 years old, amping. I got to snowboard. I didn't give a shit about anything except for snowboarding and boobs, man. you know? So,
living
But
the
yeah,
dream.
I ended up networking with some people in the industry, and at one point, one of the guys in one of the companies I was affiliated with offered me a position working for the company, and I decided to make the shift because it was like at some point I got to make money and like actually earn some sort of a living, and so I did that, and I did that for probably maybe like 8 years or a decade or some shit like that. I've never been very good with time, and even that job was a working from home type of scenario. I didn't have to go to an office or anything like that. So I guess just my whole path through life, even working for other people, was always kind of unorthodox. But yeah, I did that for a while, and that was an awesome space to be in. And I was surrounded by a ton of people. The whole industry was kind of built on people that had a passion for it. There was a lot of roots in that. So surrounded by a lot of cool people, got to travel a lot, and eventually I ended up with a friend of mine building an internet business that was in a completely different realm, more in kind of the tech side of the world. And um, I stepped away. That was like when it was time to kind of reinvent myself a little bit. And I stepped away from the snowboard industry and started stepping into that. And we we were hitting, maybe not a full home run for me at the time. That was a home run. We were making some money, and it allowed me to step away from, my day job, quote unquote. And eventually, that was what kind of led me into Bitcoin as well, and also gave me the ability to, I had the ability to work completely remote at that point. So that's when the idea spawned of like, man, I'm gonna fucking move shop. I had already purchased land in another country, and and that was kind of a weird whole story in itself. How I ended up doing that, that was just through traveling and stuff like that. But yeah, man. So I ended up at one point or another just kind of swapping out snowboarding for coconuts and surfing. Yeah.
So how you managed to get where you are currently, location wise and financially speaking, without disclosing where you are specifically?
um, I guess that kind of ties back into a little continuation on some of the stuff I was just talking about. Like traveling is really,
Exactly.
and it's kind of a funny timeline for me. It's like snowboarding was the first important thing in my life, and that led me on this interesting path through life. Very passionate about it, and my next passion in life was traveling, and snowboarding is what led me into traveling and is what afforded me the ability to travel. So I started traveling, and I kind of, because I had carved out this life that provided me with a lot of time, and I found myself, I would save my money all year long, and the moment that I could get away, I would travel, and I would go travel, and I was just pushing it every year. Like for about a decade, I was spending on average maybe probably 3 to 4 months out of the year traveling. And I was, I didn't really, I was spending everything I had on doing it, because it's just once I started doing it, that's all I really wanted to do. And the more time I spent traveling, I would push it every year. It's like I'd go for 2 months, and then the next year I'd go for 3 months, and then I was 4 months. And I had, the year before I moved, I spent 6 months out of the country, and I really kind of pushed the limit on that because I was still working for a company at that time. And kind of hard to be a good employee if you're not even in the same country where you're doing business for 6 months out of the year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I
Well,
just
nowadays you can quite play it remote.
yeah, it's a bit that job was, I did have to go to some meetings, and there were things I had to be at specific locations at certain times. But yeah, man, the snowboarding and traveling were the two things. And eventually through the traveling, I stumbled into surfing. I started surfing at one point in time, and it was just like in love with it. You know, it was something that I knew that I had to do. You know, I wanted to make that. I wanted to integrate that into my lifestyle. I wanted it to be something I could do on a regular basis, on a daily basis. And at the time, I had no idea how I was going to do it. You know, I was traveling a bunch, and I was spending all my money on traveling, and I ended up, you know, in the country that I live in now. I'd been traveling, like driving through a region of the world for several months, and kind of in the back of my head, thinking about it in a different manner of like places I'd consider investing in and living in or something like that, even though I didn't really have the resources to do it at the time. And a couple of years later, after I started the internet business, that kind of kicked the door open for me and gave me some more resources. And I went back to the country I'm in now, and I bought a piece of land. And at the time, I didn't. It was more of a like, oh, I'll buy it, and someday I'll build a beach house, and you know, do little vacations and shit there. And then you know, maybe a year or two later, we get into the financial collapse in the U.S. That the first financial collapse where shit fell apart, and it was like I was just over it. I was in a unique situation, and I could do the remote thing at that point. It was a bit of a stretch because I wasn't like some millionaire or anything, but I was making money, and I just decided to take a swing at it. And at the time, I was with a lady. I had a lady. I had the full setup. I had a house and a couple of cars, and you know, a lady and a dog and a cat and whatever. And I looked at her and I said, "What do you think? Let's science project this fucking thing." And we just sold it all, man. We sold everything. And my house actually was kind of a fucked thing because at the time it was underwater in value, as everyone's house was at that time, you know, back in like 2008 or whatever. And so I basically just walked away from the house, and I lost, you know, the equity that I had in it because it had been erased by what happened with the banks. But you know, it was a cool process to take all your belongings, and that was my second home at that point in time. You know, if you own a couple of homes, you accumulate a lot of shit. You know what I mean? Through like you have a tendency in life, it's you just accumulate more shit as time goes on. You know, so I had lived in a couple of homes and accumulated all sorts of stuff. I had lawnmowers and weed eaters and dish sets and like, you know, all the crap that comes along with having a home and just general life. And we had two garage sales and got rid of all of it. We whittled down our belongings into what we could fit into luggage to move, you know, on a flight. Basically, we had to whittle down all of our belongings and get them to be able to fit on, you know, so we could move on an airplane in a single flight. And that included bringing a dog and a cat with us. And it was a cool experience, to be honest. Like I had never done anything like that before. Just completely gotten rid of all your material possessions. You know, it was basically dwindling it down to just some clothing and, you know, a couple of meaningful possessions, and yeah, and off we went. That was a pretty cool experience, and just starting something completely new in a different country with a different culture and a different language. And yeah, it's and I've never looked back. I mean, that's not to say that it wasn't challenging many times, because especially where I moved, it's like I moved from one country that was uh, you know, very modern and progressive and cutting edge and very fast paced life, to a rural part of a country where it's like really one of the poorest, you know, it's the second poorest country in the hemisphere that I live in. And you know, like just a massive change in how you process life, I guess. And a lot of it I was looking forward to, but there was a lot of it that was unforeseen at the same time. And through the course of living here, it's really shaped me into a much different person, I think, than I ever anticipated. You know, I don't have Amazon.com or any of that. Through the course of it, I live a really, you know, the result of it all is I live a super simple life in terms of like stuff and what I do with my time. And um, yeah, I'm stoked though where I'm at, living at the beach. It's fucking awesome. I go surfing every day and pretty happy with it all, especially right now looking back with just the state of the world and the way things are. You look back at the US and it's just like I feel like a fucking genius right now, man.
What a great decision.
Yeah, dude. I had a time period like when I was making the move, people were looking at me like
What a
friends and
fucking
family.
freak.
They were, dude. Like, my whole friends and family and everybody was like really casting doubt on my decision making. Like, what are you doing? Like, how are you going to move to that place? Like, that place is dangerous, this and that, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, I'm fucking doing it. So don't worry about it. And now I look back and it's like, I feel like I had some sort of foresight. You know, there was a lot of that. You know, there were certain aspects of the way things, the direction things were going. You know, I just didn't want to be there anymore. And now it's funny to look back at the state of things right now. I couldn't be happier with where I am.
This takes me to the next question. What a regular day for you looks like?
Man, like I said, you know, I live, all of that has caused me to have a pretty simplified life. You know, I haven't had a job for more time than I'd care to admit. Um, so I kind of break my day down into three categories and dedicate time to all three categories every single day. And those categories are work, health, and learning. And at the center of all of it is really surfing and the tide and everything like that. So life really revolves around surfing more than anything. And some of the other activities here, you know, if we don't have waves at the time, I
Fishing.
really, yeah, I enjoy doing some fishing, spear fishing. I got some buddies that got you know, kind of a deep sea fishing business, and you know, I go out and do some fishing with them whenever I get the chance as well. But yeah, man. I mean, and I've been working hard on the whole crypto thing as well. I spend an awful lot of time on that, so I dedicate plenty of time to that, and just try and balance it all. Learning, I like to read, or maybe it's research in the, you know, in the field of work that I'm in, um, and then the health aspect. You know, doing exercise and stuff every day. I just try and manage just a flowy schedule, I guess. You know, because the waves revolve around the tides, so whatever the tide is doing every day could be a little bit different for me in terms of what times I'm going to work and what times I'm not. And you know, I am pretty dedicated and focused on the crypto stuff as well, so that plays a part in it as well. So just kind of balancing between all of that. But I got some pretty rad routines in general. I think you know, living at the beach is really helps a lot to stay grounded and disconnected from bullshit and keep a nice balanced and healthy routine. Like, you know, I go and walk my dog on the beach every day, and I go watch the sunset on the beach almost every day with friends, and you know, have some drinks or whatever. It's pretty pretty standard day right there for me. Some surfing, some work, some exercise, some reading. I'd say that pretty much sums up a day in the life of Stackin Bits.
That sounds real relaxing.
Yeah, it's better than a sharp stick in the eye, I think.
Better, much better than a 9 to 5, I bet.
Oof, that's my nightmare right there, man.
Yeah,
I
I did
think,
it for 13 years.
yeah, it's like I don't. I had a point, you know, and I could sit here and talk about all this, like, oh, I live in paradise and all this. Um, Definitely don't want to confuse it that this has been just a super easy path that I've traveled, because I have struggled my fucking balls off along the way to keep it alive. You know, I talked about that internet business that I had, and it ended up failing at one point, like kind of shortly after moving here. And I was in a really strange situation where I had, bought a property and paid for it, and built a house on it and paid for it. And now all of a sudden I don't have, income at all. So, and I had some money to float for a while or whatever, but I had to like scramble, and I had a point where I had, you know, like no money in the bank. So I'm stressed like any normal human is. Yeah, but I didn't have any bills. You know, my home and everything was paid for, so it's like a really strange scenario. And I struggled for a while like that, just trying to figure things out. And I was pushed into this scenario where it was like I had to make some decisions. On one end was like, do I grind it out and try and figure something out here, or do I throw in the towel and go back and get a job and go back to normal work? And I had a job offer in Brooklyn, in the States. It was a good job. It was nice. It was a great salary, and I was almost gonna do it, and I just decided I couldn't do it. I had to stick with my own weird path and not go back, because that's kind of a nightmare for me, is to go back to some sort of, I don't know, some sort of
Back to
civ-
Babylon.
yeah, back to a place where people are going to dominate my time, I guess. I prefer to struggle and barely get by than have someone else completely dominate my time. At least I was struggling, like by my own, you know, my own efforts. Yeah.
What current life projects you got going on, like outside crypto, besides trading?
Um, Man, to be honest with you, I don't really have much focus outside of, my personal focuses of health and all that kind of stuff. But if we're talking about, more organized professional type stuff, I have some stuff in mind for the future, but right now, really my main focus is really all on crypto. But within that, I've got, I'm working with 4 people right now, a team of 4 people, and we're building an algorithm platform of sorts. And that kind of spawned from building my trading system and reaching a point that it was, for me to make progress and move forward. I felt that I needed to take it another step deeper and get some level of automation integrated with the system. And so, we're about 4 months deep into that right now, and it's very heavily centered around gathering a lot of data. So we're building out a lot of really unique data sets, and to build a nice, robust, flexible algorithm engine. And the purpose of that, like, that's not going to be available for the public, or I have zero intention of selling access to it or anything like that. That's definitely going to just be something that we use ourselves. But through the course of it, because we're gathering so much data and organizing so much unique data sets, that I think there's plenty of value in a lot of the data sets alone. So we'll probably make some kind of a site that organizes the data in a visual manner that's useful for people in this space. Probably won't charge any money for it or anything, just a site to put out there and give back, I guess. But yeah, those are pretty much the only things from any sort of professional standpoint I'm working on right now. Is I got some real specific goals I'm working towards, as far as growing the portfolio and stuff like that. And once I crack a couple of nuts on that one, I'll start to shift focus into some other things. I got some projects I'd like to do within the country that I'm living in. and yeah, always always got to be working on something, right?
Are you gonna go the way of typical surfer and get a self-sustainable farm?
Um, Probably not, but I've been. I mean, there's some sort of attraction to it on one level. The place I live is definitely not like that at all. I mean, it's a rural area and everything, but I've got some pretty nice amenities in this area that I live in, and the place I live in is kind of interesting. It's a community. It's like a gated community of sorts, and it's an enormous property. The place has thousands of acres of property, and within it they have their own farms and everything. They've got there's a restaurant here, and the restaurant they provide all the food for the restaurant out like here locally from within their own property. And they've got orchards and fruits and vegetables and a farm with pigs and cows and all sorts of animals and chickens and all of it. So I kind of have that already without actually having to maintain it myself. So
That's
that's
neat.
yeah, that's kind of it's nice not to have to focus my energy on any of that.
Sweet. Going to the topic of trading, can you walk us through your go-to trading strategy and style?
Um, yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, I'm kind of transitioning. Right now is a little bit of a transition period for me. Is starting to transition a bit into some algorithmic strategies. I've built out some indicators with the help of a couple of friends because I don't do any coding or anything. But translating basically the concepts of my system. My system is built on primarily on price action and a unique way that I read and interpret the price action. So I'm kind of in this state of transitioning from strictly price action more into algorithmic strategy. But and that's an ongoing evolution itself. But all of it was derived from personal system that I've developed, and I consider myself to be a bit more of a high time frame trader, I guess, and I focus on swing candles more than anything. Really, that's where like I make an effort. The system that I focus on is to take positions in swing candles, and I prefer focusing on high time frames, so swing trades. I try not to take many lower time frame trades. I'd prefer to hold a position for a few weeks to a couple of months or whatever with trend, and a lot of that depends on volatility as well. If we've got some really aggressive volatility, then I'll zoom in and make a lot more trades. The higher the volatility, the more trades I'll make. And once that volatility starts to cool off, um, I stay away because uh, that's not my strong suit. The more I trade in those conditions when volatility starts to cool down, the less efficient my trading becomes. I start to take some losing trades, and it starts to chew away at the capital. So once that starts to happen, it starts to cool down. I prefer to stand back and zoom out, and just my active position is waiting at that point, and try and build a position over time for the swing in the direction that I believe that it's going to go. So it's kind of a vague way of describing it, I guess.
This episode is brought to you by PrimeXBT, the exchange that makes possible to trade with leverage on legacy markets from a single Bitcoin-based account. What's your overall legacy in crypto market forecast,
To be
considering all
honest,
these crazy times we're living in right now?
yeah, to be honest with you, I've never actively participated in legacy markets aside from real estating. Gold and silver, I participated a long time ago, but I have paid more attention to it recently, obviously, with just kind of the way everything's intertwined and the state of the global, all of it right now. Uh, I kind of suspect the euphoric momentum that Legacy is experiencing has some sort of aggressive correction at some point in time, but um, you know, I don't know if it goes any lower than the spike in March. Going back to that, I don't participate in legacy markets. I've paid more attention to it than I would have previously, just because of the state of things right now. It feels awful euphoric to me. I do anticipate at some point or another some sort of a correction. I don't expect it to just continuously go up in a straight line. And I kind of feel the same thing for crypto as well. There's awful lot of euphoric sentiment in the market right now. So I'm just trying to be wary of that. And at the same time, it's been really nice, refreshing, and promising to see this jolt in the alt market that we've seen. Because it's the first time that we've seen real movement like this in the alt market in a few years. And more than anything, for me, the biggest takeaway for that for me is that it goes to show that crypto has been in aggressive and active development the entire time. All these projects that have been running hard recently, uh, they didn't start yesterday. These are all projects. The majority of these projects that are really bullish right now in the alt market have been developing for years. Some of these were ICOs in 2017, ICOs in 2017, and so it just goes to show, it's like, even though the state of things has been bearish and alts have been eating shit nonstop for a couple of years, and people kind of get zoomed in on that and draw their conclusions based on that performance, a difficult environment from a market standpoint, but on the development side, things have continued to push forward. And so I think that's the most positive thing I take from what's happening in alts right now. It just goes to show crypto is still very, very active in development and moving forward. And macro version, from a macro perspective, I'm super bullish on crypto, but I don't expect things to just go up in a straight line. I think we've got some corrections coming that are probably fairly aggressive corrections, but we will see.
What coins you currently have? Talking about crypto, or you
Um,
just trade the wave?
no, you know what? My strategy is probably a bit different than most people's strategy. And it's been something that's evolved over time. My strategy was very different in 2017 than it is now. Um, and that was partially just adapting to a market environment I'd never participated in over the last few years. So primarily, I'm focused on Bitcoin. The only spot holdings I really have are Bitcoin and Ethereum. Um, and I haven't been in or out of my main spot positions since the market bottomed out in 2018, I believe, that December, when Bitcoin crashed down to 3K or whatever. I shoved in during that time period, and everything since then has been trading in derivatives in both directions, longing and shorting, and just kind of flowing with the market. So the fact that I focus primarily on Bitcoin from that standpoint, my strategy with alts is every few months or so, I'll pull a percentage of profits and accumulate some coins, particularly if the alt market looks a certain way. I'd had a couple of times where I'd accumulated some coins and the market just continued to go down, even though it looked like it was accumulating, was going to go up. It ate shit again. So I got stopped out on a handful of things, maybe like 2 times on a bunch of coins the last couple of years. But right now, the alts that I've accumulated, I've got some Tezos, I got ZRX, Synthetics, Rec, AST, I got Dodge, I've got Neo, Ren, Rune, ENJ, KNC, and LRC. And I've got a couple more smaller projects that I'm probably going to throw a little bit of money at. That's just on some of the dexes, little weird shit that's on Uniswap and on Loopring. And these aren't really positions that I'm looking to trade actively. These are stuff that I've bought with house money, so to speak. It's with profits. And so the idea is, if things run, like I've had a couple of nice runners, Synthetics in particular has been a really hard runner for me. Runes run pretty hard. KNCs run really hard. So I've taken some profits out of a handful of these. Havens run, I actually didn't talk about that one because that was another aspect of alts that's different. Yes, some of these things have run hard, and I'll shave some profits out of them to try and recuperate, I guess, initial investment if possible. But my strategy is to not trade them and just hold them for 2 or 3 years, whatever. And if I hit a couple of home runs, awesome. If some of them go to zero, it is what it is. That's kind of my alt strategy. And the other aspect of the alt strategy I have is privacy coins. I kind of treat those differently. I've got a bag of privacy coins that I've been accumulating, and I don't even accumulate those in relation to the cycle. I just, every few months, I pull some profits out and I dedicate a percentage of profits to a basket of privacy coins. Right now, I got XMR, I got Monero, I got ZEC, I got some XCZ,
You
I
got
got
some Beam?
Haven. I don't have any Beam yet, man.
You should get
Yeah,
some.
yeah. I know that those were kind of on my radar. I just haven't gotten to either of those any of those Mimblewimble coins yet.
Yeah, that one looks really good on the chart right now.
Yeah, yeah. I
And
haven't even
and,
looked at it.
and they're spinning their narrative into DeFi stuff. So
Yeah,
that's probably gonna pump hard.
yeah. I know I'd read something about Litecoin implementing Mimblewimble into their code or chain at some point in the near future as well, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, anytime that I get into a discussion on Twitter with people about privacy coins, someone always pipes in and says, "Do you got Grand? Do you got Beam? You got to get one of those," because I list all the ones I have, and I don't have any of those yet. I've got Pirate Coin, I got PivX, I got Haven. I'm
And I
kind of
thought you focused mostly on Bitcoin and Ethereum, but after this question, I know that I can tell that you packing a lot of outs.
Yeah, man, I got some bags. I mean, if I was going to relate it from a portfolio percentage standpoint, like, this is all very small percentage in comparison. And the way that I do it is you know, it's always with profits. I'm not buying alts unless I've made some profits, so every quarter or every couple of few months, you know, but if things are starting to really heat up, if charts are really bottomed out, and I've made like a really good trade or something, and I pull some profits, like, I'll dump some profits and accumulate something. So, but my alts, I do have plenty of alt bags, and I just try not to trade them, because I don't, to have like a big bag of a bunch of altcoins and actively manage it. It's just,
Yeah, it's a pain in the ass.
yeah, punch me in the face, dude. I don't want to do that. It's
Yeah,
enough just to manage trading Bitcoin as it is that's plenty to me. Like that keeps me busy as it is. So I don't really have that much interest in managing actively multiple trades on a dozen different assets. And even more so, I think that like fundamentals in the alt market are what I tend to spend more time on doing research. And that in itself, that's a time consuming thing all in itself too. If you want to dig deep, and like that's a whole rabbit hole within itself. It's like this DeFi thing that unfolded, that this was going on. This didn't start overnight. This was going on for uh, months, for over a year. This was unfolding, and it just happens that the majority of people on crypto Twitter were oblivious to it. There's a very small handful of people that were privy to what was going on before it really blew the top off, and people were like, holy shit. Nobody looked at those charts. Kyber Network and Lend and Bancor, those charts were pumping hard for a long time before anybody paid attention to them.
Yeah, no doubt. I
Yeah,
completely missed the beginning of the DeFi pump until I
yeah,
got some run on late April, I think. Well,
yeah,
early May, something like that.
yeah,
But that's the benefit sometimes of start to look into some coins on Twitter. Sometimes it pays off.
yeah.
So, what are your biggest lessons learned since 2017?
Um, I guess one of my biggest lessons is probably just adapting with the market. Like you can learn a way of doing things, but that doesn't mean it's always going to work. You know, it's like there could be a certain way of doing things, but it the market environment might shift completely. The market, crypto market in particular, being uh, a very young market, very volatile. It's constantly evolving and changing. In real specifics, I think one lesson I really learned in 2017 was, post 2017 was there's no reason to knife catch in either direction. Um, I had some times where I didn't get burned particularly, but could have positioned myself a lot better had I just waited for a reaction rather than just blindly placing an order at some level because I think it's an important level. You never know what price is going to do. If there's volatility, who the fuck knows? So I prefer to wait and watch some kind of a reaction and get in on the backside of things. Might not be
But
as
sorry to interrupt, but didn't you catch the March 13th dip?
uh I didn't catch it as well as I should have. Uh, that was actually kind of I that was a tough nut for me to swallow, man. That was a hard one. That was I caught the short. Like I crushed the short. So I made a ton of money on the short, and I sold it. I can't even remember it was under $4,000 that I closed out on the short. So I absolutely just fucking cranked that one out the park. And I was setting up to long it and started clicking the button, and the exchange went fucking haywire. I was on BitMEX, and BitMEX glitched out and shut down, and they shut down for like 40 minutes or something. And I was, it was still the site was still kind of functioning, and I didn't know if my order went through or not, and and you know, I started looking at the spot exchanges, and they'd already jumped like 50 or 60%. And I was just like, holy fuck. And BitMEX came back online, and I had no orders had gone through, and so I missed out on a really really healthy gain that would have been just less than 24 hours because I missed that. But yeah, that would have been somewhat knife catching. Where I sold it was kind of a knife as well. But those are levels I had marked out a long time prior. Well, once it broke through, and that's not to say I had expectations it was going to go that low. I really didn't. But once it got moving, I had my levels ready. It was like it's gotta react here, or we're in trouble, or this thing's gonna be it's gonna go a lot further, And I've more than anything, it's like I feel bummed that my order didn't go through, that I didn't have the opportunity to long it. I was pretty salty about that because that was a lot of money that I missed out on. There's a lot of opportunity cost on that. But on the flip side of that, I feel damn fucking grateful that I closed that short when I did. I must have closed that short a matter of minutes before the site shut down, and that would have just completely fucking, I still would have made plenty of profit, but
Not as
that
much.
thing, it bounced really hard, and it would have erased a fair amount of my profit. So yeah, you can't win them all. But I made some decent trades on the way up. I got chopped a couple of times on some stuff, and then I got a real decent trade from around like 6-ish up to 9.5. So that was those in the last couple few months. Those are my two most significant positions. Was the short, and then along up to 9.5, and then from there I haven't had anything that's any good. I've gotten chopped a couple of times. I've made a couple of insignificant trades. This whole region has been pretty not my cup of tea, I guess.
But despite that, you still traded.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't been trading a lot. I guess it's a strange thing. I know everybody's been making a ton of money on alts and everything, and because of the way that I approach alts, it's exciting for me, but it's not exciting in the same manner. I guess the way that I'm accumulating stuff, and I have pulled some profits to pay myself back on initial investments, but those are investments I just want to hold on to and let them run. I'm not trying to I'm not balls deep in
You
one of
know,
those. Yeah, I'm not balls deep in them to the point where my portfolio is going to go through the roof if I hit it 10 times on it or something.
cool.
So yeah.
So stacking, why you make of the Twitter hack that happened a few weeks back? Who do you think did
uh
it and why?
Man, I don't know. It was a pretty entertaining day. I happened to be sitting right there, and Angelo's tweet came through right, live right in front of me right then and there. So I got to see that, and
I
it's
don't
like,
fucking understand why he was the first one. Still,
yeah, it was like,
it's
well,
probably
that's
someone. It was. I think it was probably someone we like. It's in crypto Twitter. Must have been.
yeah.
The
Otherwise, I mean,
execution was so lame.
yeah, you wouldn't know otherwise. I mean, for me, it was probably mostly just some script kiddies more than anything, and what they managed to pull off was pretty impressive. Obviously, it was kind of a big deal, but the execution was amateur as fuck, and I don't know. Yeah, it's just kind of a funny little event more than anything. Entertaining at the very least.
Could have been huge.
Yeah.
I
The
think.
strangest thing for me, what trips me out more than all of it is, I saw Angelo's tweet hit the feed, and then Kobe replies to it with a question mark, and a handful of us are saying he's probably hacked, and they're friends in real life. So he got on the horn with Angelo and raps with Angelo, and then it hadn't been it was in less than 5 minutes. Kobe's hitting a post on Twitter that says, "Hey, don't send any money to this address. He got hacked." And I hop into that thread, and it was just a laundry list of people who had already sent the money. I was like, what the fuck? That just amazes me, It's like, it amazes me that there's people smart enough to go through the process it takes to actually buy Bitcoin and understand Bitcoin, and then turn around and fall for some bullshit like that.
And send it to a Nigerian prince.
Exactly. It's like these scams are nothing new. Like this shit's been going on since the internet was developed, since email days, since that shit started.
Going to next question. What do you make of the announcement of the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency that banks may provide custody services for crypto assets?
For me personally, that's just kind of a non-event. Like I don't really care about it. I think it's kind of interesting, I guess. In the grand scheme of everything, anything that bridges the gap and facilitates adoption for average people that are more comfortable with familiar old systems, um, that's probably a positive in the end of the day. I think there's a lot of irony in it, and it just seems really weird. I don't know how or why anybody who would get involved with crypto would ever put their crypto in a bank and allow their bank to be the custody holders of their crypto. I'd prefer that my bank never even knew that I had crypto myself personally. So I'll never be using it. And in the end of the day, I think, if you're thinking long term, those are nothing more than temporary bridges. But yeah, it's cool. It's good news. And same thing goes with the PayPal news. I don't even know if that was ever confirmed or not, but I remember seeing that pop up a handful of times over the past month or so that PayPal is going to be integrating some way to interact with Bitcoin for their customers. So that's another one of those, um, you know, events that can help facilitate the growth and adoption. So it's cool. I'm all for it. It's good.
Yeah, in the grand scheme of things, I think it's really positive news,
Yeah.
especially for people that don't have the knowledge to on how to acquire any cryptocurrencies.
Yeah. I mean, even if it's on the most basic level of legitimizing, like if banks are going to accept crypto deposits for a customer, then that in itself is them saying that it's legitimate, which has been the opposite for so long. And you still have talking heads out there, bobbleheads that are pumping their fists in the air in the public and saying how Bitcoin is garbage, it's nothing. You got the Peter Schiffs and the Nuriels of the world who are just passionately against Bitcoin and don't believe it's legitimate. And meanwhile, now all of a sudden you've got some central banks in the U.S. that are saying that they'll take deposits and hold deposits for customers on these quote unquote illegitimate assets and currencies. So yeah, if nothing else, on the most simplified manner, like the mind share from that standpoint, that's like a subconscious thing. Oh, my bank allows deposits to that. Banks, I can put Bitcoin in my bank. For the average normie, that's like a subconscious thing. Like Bitcoin is legitimized that much more. It's just standard protocol. Maybe they should have some.
Yeah, I guess it's opening some doors and causing the domino effect for the rest of institutions that want to innovate and bring some other new techs. Like I think it was yesterday or today that Visa is advancing their approach into digital currency, which is like a slight rumor that they're gonna start doing something with crypto. So I think it's positive for overall. Also,
Yeah. Yeah.
very happy to have hosted Stacking Bits on Point Blank. Thanks for coming on, man. Can you tell us where we can find you?
You can find me on Twitter, lurking in the background. And Stackin Bits is my handle, and there's no G in there. Stackin.
Stacking.
Yeah, Stackin Bits. On Twitter, and that's the only place you're gonna find me. I do lurk in a handful of Telegram channels as well, and Discords, but I don't dedicate much time. I struggle to spend too much time on any of that stuff. Most of any of the time I have is on Twitter. And yeah, I'm in the mix with the rest of the peeps in the crypto space here on Twitter.
Thanks for listening. Until next time. Peace.
Yeah, Panama. Thanks for having me, man. Have a great weekend.
You too, man.
All right, peace.
This episode was brought to you by PrimeXBT, the exchange where you can trade without KYC on legacy markets with your Bitcoin. You can trade commodities like gold, silver, oil, even indexes and forex. Join now and get a 50% bonus on top of your deposit for trading at u.primexbt.com/Panama.